Welcome to the place of rest, where our aim is to give you language that helps you displace the growing confusion, chaos, and dis-ease of our times. My name is Jonathan Boyce, and it's my pleasure to bring to you today's episode. My wife and I conclude our conversation with Virginia discussing compounding insults and barriers to healing we can displace and resolve to enter a place of rest. We hope you enjoy today's conversation.
Jonathan, Amanda, EMFs. Tell us what they are and the role they played.
EMF stands for electromagnetic frequency. There's a whole category of what would be considered electropollution, and that can include radio frequencies, extremely low frequencies. We're going to have someone who is actually studied in this field on the podcast to speak about this as well here in the next coming weeks, so stay tuned for that. About 4 years ago, when we went through the 40 days of rest, Dr. Cowden had talked about how it's important when you sleep to reduce your exposure to them so that your body can get to a state of relaxation and it can begin to heal naturally as it's designed to do.
They can devastate, if we're not aware of this kind of pollution, it can devastate our health.
Yes, exactly. And so we had learned about that years before. However, we never really implemented any of that. It didn't seem like it was that important. Well, with seizures in the body, it's an electrical dysfunction. And so we began to look at what we could do to help remove any electropollution for Hudson. And one thing that was incredibly interesting is in the timeline was we had a smart meter installed on the utilities on our house. And 1 month later, Hudson had his first seizure. Mm-hmm. So through this whole process of 2 years of horrific seizures and figuring out how we can help him heal, we asked the utility company to remove their smart meter. 10 days later, he had his last grand mal seizure, and he hasn't had another grand mal seizure since.
Wow. Compounded by the other insults. Yeah. The mercury, the generational dynamics, the emotional things, the history, the government, as you became educated on those things that had really governed thinking, generational thinking and behavior and worldviews and whatnot, but compounded with some of those things that aren't always productive that we get from our relatives, and certainly we'll leave our own little tokens behind. Mm-hmm. But compounded by the spiritual, emotional, physical, there's the reality of these external insults in the form of EMFs that can be devastating.
Yeah.
Wow.
I like that you use the word insults. I think that that's a really helpful word, especially in learning how to look at the whole person, the spirit, the soul, the body. Prior to rest, I think I often thought of root cause as one thing. And I think often it's not. It's an accumulation of many insults, environmental things on a physical level. That's where diet, supplementation, those kind of things come in. Spiritual and emotional insults all compound into these states of dis-ease.
Yeah, and even parasites too. Like as we've unpacked and talked about with Dr. Jerry Marzinski, parasites can be spiritual parasites too, energetic parasites, emotional parasites. So looking at these things and realizing that there's a spiritual, emotional, physical constitution, they all can affect each other, right? And so how do we effectively remove these insults or help resolve some of these conflicts so that the body can naturally begin to heal itself as it was designed?
Yeah. Wow. And wow, there's a mouthful. We did a podcast with a gentleman on bioenergetics that instituted the TKM method.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so after that podcast episode, I actually reached out to Dr. King at the King Institute. We can link to his website in the show notes. We began to learn more about TKM and how it could help support Hudson in the natural healing process. So it's, again, a physics-based approach, and we began to approach his health from a physical aspect as well using TKM. to help. There's ones to stop a seizure, but then there are sequences to help the body heal and regenerate from what could be the root cause of seizures.
Fascinating. He actually has a lot of data and research in facilitating healing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, because it's the body that heals itself.
So he removes, energetically displaces and removes obstructions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's another important thing too, is like he talks about removing barriers to that natural healing.
That's right.
And that's another thing that Dr. Cowden mentions in the 40 Days of Rest. We talk about there are 8 barriers to healing. These are really great questions to ask yourself to see what could potentially be spiritual, emotional, or physical barriers to you stepping into a place
and
of
of course,
rest.
we energy test people when we ask those questions.
Exactly. Yeah. Because just because you might be saying, well, yeah, of course, I'm ready to get well, there might be something in your physiology that's not ready yet. And so energy testing to do that and using biofeedback can help reveal those barriers.
That's right. And we have to identify those immediately before we move forward. Actually, Jonathan, if you don't mind, we need to know what the barriers to healing are.
The mental blocks to healing are, I want to be well. I'm ready to be well. I'm willing to be well. I'm able to be well. I deserve to be well. It is safe for me if I get well. It is safe for others if I get well. And I believe I can get well. Mm-hmm. So working through each of those on a spiritual, emotional, and physical level are imperative so that we can allow the body to begin to heal naturally.
It's extraordinary the things we can accomplish when we have the right information.
Mm-hmm.
By way of encouragement, I would say to everyone listening, nothing that happens to you in your entire life is random. There's not a single disease state that you have or your child has that's random. I think approaching whatever you're dealing with measures of curiosity and wonder. Loved those words, Jonathan and Amanda. Curiosity and wonder will lead you into this path of discovery. And it's fascinating. Of course, you can contact us, and Jonathan and Amanda, hopefully you can post some resources, and certainly on our website, we can put additional resources. And of course, the 40 days and the 40 weeks of rest are pre-recorded. We're in the process of re-recording those, but there's a lot of valuable information in there where people can begin to really think differently about pretty much everything in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the fruit of it is really wholeness, wellness, freedom, greater measures of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Really, it's this understanding and application of these principles that we learn through working with you through the 40 Days of Rest that has allowed us to stay this course as Hudson's body has gone and sustained so much, and we experienced seizures progress and get worse, and him not be able to walk and him not be able to talk, and just these just horrific things to watch as a parent.
Boy, you stayed the course too. And I think what's important here, and Jonathan and both of you touched on it before, modalities are wonderful. There's wonderful modalities. And one thing might work for a while and then the other thing doesn't work. And that one modality, for example, the detoxification and the resources you were using to detox him, it was all working, but there were other obstructions. So you need to figure out what to layer, how and when, and then be steadfast in knowing that laws govern. Laws are what give us the framework, really, and the security and the freedom to live and be wild, if you will, because you're contained by these laws that secure and advance your existence, your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you can understand them and be in sync with them as you both were, it gives you like a roadmap, a blueprint to stay with. And you don't have to become discouraged. You just wonder again, and you become curious about what else are we missing? What other parts of what makes us human, perhaps, are we not taking into account?
Yeah.
You know, of course, related to spiritual things, emotional things, and physical things. But as those pieces, you start putting those pieces together, it's really fascinating because you're transformed not by fear and despair, but you're transformed by just wisdom, knowledge compounded by understanding and the application of it. That's wisdom. And what a story you'll tell. I know this is still fresh and shocking, actually, but wow.
And I just want to speak to what we were watching unfold in Hudson's body right now. Like, as I said, we've witnessed some horrific things that I don't wish upon any child, any parent to see. And as Hudson's body, as the natural processes have been supported, these things are coming back online. He's walking, talking, jumping, singing, dancing, playing. Every day, his vocabulary is increasing. His creativity is coming back online. These functions that disappeared for a time are reappearing, and it's incredible to watch. We've cried so many tears of joy. Did you see that? Did you hear what he just did?
What's the first thing he said to you?
No.
I have never been so happy to hear a child protest. He was protesting something, and it was no. And we just laughed and smiled, and we're like, yeah.
Throughout this whole process too, like before the seizure started, one of his favorite songs, he would grab his little ukulele and just start strumming away and sing Graves to Gardens. One thing he began to say again was, "Mom, I can sing."
And I said, "What can you sing?" And he goes, "Graves into Gardens."
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you both so much for sharing this incredible story.
In closing, we have resources, some questions that we will share, some things that we have found helpful on this journey as we've navigated the complexities of physical ailment. And we've compiled some resources that we found helpful, and we'll share those in the show notes.
We want to be here and support you as much as possible on whatever journey that you are on and help you step into rest.
Thank you both so much.
We hope listening to this episode has brought you closer to experiencing the freedom of wholeness and healing. If you have questions or comments about today's episode, or for updates about REST, please visit our Instagram or Facebook at The Place of Rest. If you would like more information about Virginia, or to support and join the cause of rest, please go to theplaceofrest.com/donate or call 949-289-5935. Thank you for listening to Rest with Virginia Dixon. We'll see you next week.